It was supposed to be an ordinary night inside the most guarded residence in Britain. Cameras were rolling. Security teams were alert. History was quiet. And then silence. One crucial piece of security footage vanished. Not corrupted. Not misplaced. Deleted. Within hours, whispers rippled through the corridors of Buckingham Palace. And before sunrise, King Charles himself would make a decision that would fracture loyalties at the highest level of the monarchy. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Buckingham Palace has long stood not merely as a home, but as a fortress of ritual and relentless surveillance, a place where every corridor is monitored, every entrance logged, every second archived in digital permanence. Nothing inside those walls simply disappears. Not documents, not conversations, and certainly not security footage. The system is layered, redundant, guarded by protocols built over decades of caution and quiet paranoia. Which is why, when an IT supervisor conducting a routine overnight audit noticed a gap in the timeline, his first instinct was not confusion, but dread. The deletion was precise. 11 minutes removed from the internal archive, carved out cleanly as though they had never existed. No corrupted files. No hardware malfunction. The system log showed a manual override, a password entered, a confirmation accepted, a deliberate command executed. And the credentials attached to that command belonged to someone with rare and intimate access, Queen Camilla's most trusted assistant, a woman whose loyalty had never once been publicly questioned. Inside the palace's subterranean security office, the atmosphere shifted from routine to crisis in seconds. Engineers were summoned back from their quarters. Encrypted calls were made to senior protection officers. Backup servers were combed for fragments. There were none. Whoever initiated the deletion understood the architecture of the system. They knew where redundancies lived. They knew how to bypass them. This was not an accident born of panic. It felt calculated. What made the situation combustible was not merely the act itself, but the timing. The missing footage was time-stamped during a private, high-level engagement involving senior members of the royal household. No press, no official record on the public schedule. A discreet gathering behind closed doors, the kind that sustains the monarchy's inner machinery. The corridor camera outside that restricted antechamber had been rolling as usual, until 22:14. Then nothing. At 22:25, the feed resumed, sterile and uneventful, as if those 11 minutes had been swallowed whole. Within hours, doors were locked that were rarely locked. Senior aides were instructed to remain available. The tone of conversations sharpened. Words like containment and exposure slipped into urgent whispers. By the time dawn brushed against the palace windows, King Charles had been personally briefed. Those present would later describe his reaction as restrained, but not unmoved. His expression did not betray panic. It betrayed something more unsettling: disappointment edged with resolve. For a monarch who had spent a lifetime preparing to protect the institution above all else, the idea that a breach had occurred from within his closest circle struck at the core of his reign. Loyalty, after all, is the invisible architecture of monarchy. And now, that architecture had cracked. It was in that early morning meeting, under the weight of tradition and threat, that a single word was spoken aloud for the first time within palace walls. Investigation. Not inquiry. Not review. Investigation. But what exactly was captured in those missing minutes? And why would someone so close to the Queen Consort risk everything to erase it? To understand the deletion, you must understand proximity. In the monarchy, access is power, and Camilla's assistant wasn't just staff, she was gatekeeper, confidante, silent witness to private conversations never meant for public ears. For years, she operated in the shadows of royalty. Trusted. Invisible. Loyal. Until one decision placed her at the center of a storm that even the crown could not contain. She had not stumbled into the palace by accident. Her rise was careful, deliberate, almost surgical. Vetted through layers of scrutiny, examined by background checks that combed through decades of her life, she emerged as someone the institution believed it could rely on without hesitation. Discretion was her currency. Silence, her shield. In a world where whispers could become headlines by sunrise, she built her reputation on never being the source of either. That reputation is precisely what made the system log so chilling. Her closeness to Queen Camilla was not ceremonial, it was personal. She coordinated private schedules that never appeared on official calendars. She carried messages that bypassed formal channels. She managed communications during delicate moments when the monarchy's public posture required absolute control. On foreign tours, she traveled at Camilla's side. During private retreats, she was among the few permitted inside informal discussions. She knew not just where the queen consort would be, but why, and with whom. That kind of proximity breeds trust. It also breeds knowledge. Yet beneath the polished choreography of royal life, tensions had been quietly simmering. The monarchy stood at a crossroads between tradition and reinvention. Senior advisors who had served through previous reigns favored caution, restraint, preservation. A newer generation of strategists pushed for transparency, calculated vulnerability, controlled modernization. Public image was no longer sculpted solely by official statements. It was shaped by social media storms and viral narratives. Within this fragile balancing act, disagreements over strategy had grown sharper in recent months. There had also been murmurs soft at first, then harder to ignore about information slipping beyond palace walls. Nothing explosive, nothing provable, but enough to rattle nerves. A detail mentioned in a private meeting surfacing days later in speculative commentary. A subtle shift in tone that suggested someone, somewhere, was talking. Trust inside the royal ecosystem had already been strained before the deletion. The gap in the footage did not create suspicion. It amplified it. And then there was the matter of access. Only 3 individuals held the clearance required to permanently remove classified security files. 3 names safeguarded by digital encryption and institutional protocol. When investigators reviewed the override authorization, they did not find ambiguity. They found certainty. The assistant's credentials. Time-stamped, authenticated, confirmed. The system had recorded her digital signature as cleanly as a royal decree. But proximity can complicate motive. Was this an act of rogue protection? A panicked attempt to shield her employer from embarrassment? Or something more strategic, more calculated, woven into the quiet power struggles that define the palace's inner circle? Because if the deletion was intentional, the deeper question loomed. What did those cameras record that could threaten the monarchy itself? The missing footage lasted just 11 minutes. 11 minutes that palace officials now refer to only as the gap. It began at 22:14 and ended at 22:25. A hallway camera. A private antechamber. Restricted access. No press. No public schedule. Whatever occurred in that corridor was never meant to leave those walls. But when investigators reconstructed fragments from backup metadata, the outline of something deeply unsettling began to emerge. The corridor itself was not grand or ceremonial. It was functional, discreet, positioned beside a private meeting room reserved for conversations too sensitive for official record. Heads of state had passed through that space. Family disputes had been quietly negotiated there. Strategic decisions about the monarchy's future had unfolded behind its sealed doors. On most nights, the hallway remained still after dusk. Yet on this particular evening, internal logs confirmed something unusual. The room had been booked off record, flagged for restricted clearance, and shielded from routine staff movement. There had been no public announcement of a gathering, no line in the court circular. And yet digital access cards revealed the presence of a senior royal entering that antechamber shortly before the gap began. The timing was surgical. At 22:13, the corridor feed functioned normally. At 22:14, it vanished, not flickered, not distorted, erased. The palace's layered security protocols had been heightened that evening. Additional patrol routes activated, internal monitoring temporarily intensified. For that hour, protection levels mirrored those used during high-risk diplomatic briefings. Why such caution for a meeting that officially did not exist? When forensic analysts combed through system metadata, they found ghostly traces. Door sensors recorded multiple entries and exits within the deleted window, more movement than expected for a simple private discussion. An audio sensor embedded in the ceiling, rarely consulted under normal circumstances, registered elevated decibel levels. The classification in the log was clinical, heated exchange, but those two words carried weight. Heated between whom? And over what? Then came another anomaly. A secondary exterior camera, positioned far from the corridor but aligned with a discrete side exit, captured hurried motion minutes after 22:25. A figure leaving at a pace that did not match the calm choreography typically associated with royal routine. The timestamp aligned almost perfectly with the restoration of the hallway feed. It was as if the system had been allowed to resume only once whatever had transpired reached its breaking point. Cybersecurity experts within the palace confirmed what many had already feared. The deletion was not a reflexive act. It required a deliberate override, followed by a secondary confirmation code. Two conscious decisions, two digital signatures. Whoever pressed those commands understood that the action would leave a trace, which meant the motive had to outweigh the risk. That realization shifted the atmosphere from suspicion to something heavier: premeditation. Inside the palace, theories began to coil around one another. Was the confrontation political, personal, strategic? Some whispered that a disagreement over the monarchy's evolving public stance had erupted beyond control. Others suggested that a revelation unexpected and destabilizing had detonated in that private chamber. And if voices were raised, if tempers flared, if words were spoken that could fracture reputations, then the instinct to erase evidence might not have been about concealment alone. It might have been about preservation. But preservation of what? A relationship? A legacy? The crown itself? As speculation intensified behind closed doors, King Charles faced a choice that would define his reign: protect the institution or expose the truth. For King Charles, the crown has never been just ceremony, it is legacy, endurance, survival. But now, the threat was internal. Not from tabloids, not from politics, from within his own trusted circle. Advisors urged discretion. Some warned of scandal, others demanded transparency. And in the solitude of his private study, the king reportedly uttered 6 chilling words: "We will not bury this mistake." He had waited a lifetime to ascend the throne, carrying with him the weight of history's lessons. He understood, perhaps more than most, how fragile public trust could be. Monarchies do not fall overnight, they erode in whispers, in doubts, in the slow corrosion of credibility. Every reign is measured not only by its triumphs but by the crises it survives. And this deletion, this breach threatened to carve a quiet crack through the foundation of his authority. The old royal instinct would have been containment. Close ranks. Issue a brief statement. Reassign quietly. Protect the image at all costs. That had been the survival strategy for generations. But Charles was ruling in a different era, an age where secrecy breeds suspicion faster than scandal itself. The public demanded transparency. The press thrived on ambiguity. And the king knew that if he chose silence, the silence would speak louder than any confession. An emergency council convened before the palace had fully awakened. Legal advisors arrived with thick folders and tighter expressions. Security chiefs presented digital logs, timestamps, authentication trails. The atmosphere was restrained but electric. Every word felt weighted. Some argued the assistant had acted alone, perhaps in a misguided attempt to shield her employer from embarrassment. A loyal aide panicking under pressure. An isolated error. Clean. Containable. Others were less convinced. They pointed to the prior anomalies. The heightened security that evening. The multiple entries logged during the gap. They asked the question no one wanted to voice too loudly. Was this merely an act of individual judgment or part of a broader orchestration? A deliberate maneuver inside palace walls? The suggestion hung heavy in the room, because if the deletion was coordinated, then the crisis was not about one assistant. It was about the integrity of the inner circle itself. Charles listened more than he spoke. Those who know him describe a man who absorbs tension, who weighs silence carefully before breaking it. Yet beneath that calm exterior lay an unmistakable conflict. Camilla was not just queen consort. She was his partner, his ally through decades of scrutiny and redemption. To authorize a sweeping investigation that might entangle someone so close to her was not simply a political decision. It was personal. Still, the monarchy does not bend around personal comfort. And in a move described by insiders as unprecedented, the king ordered an independent review. External oversight granted access to internal systems. It was a calculated risk. Inviting outsiders into palace security operations risked exposure. But refusing might risk something worse: the perception of concealment. That was when another word entered the conversation: consequences. Not symbolic reprimands. Real consequences. The kind that reverberate through careers and reputations. The kind that signal to the nation that the crown is not immune to accountability. In that moment, Charles was no longer weighing loyalty against optics. He was weighing history against hesitation. But investigations inside royal walls rarely remain private, and soon, the first leak would ignite public curiosity. It began as a cryptic post from an anonymous insider account: security breach at the highest level. Within hours, journalists were calling palace contacts. News vans gathered at the gates. The phrase "deleted footage" trended globally before noon. Suddenly, the monarchy was no longer controlling the narrative was controlling them. And the public wanted answers no official statement could safely provide. The leak did not explode all at once. It spread like a controlled burn that suddenly found oxygen. First came speculation on digital forums known for tracking royal movements. Then a prominent political correspondent reposted the claim with a single question mark. By mid-morning, major networks were cautiously referencing reports of internal disruption. The phrase was vague, but the implication was not. Something had happened inside Buckingham Palace, and it was serious enough to unsettle the king. Within the palace, suspicion sharpened. The investigative circle had been small, tightly sealed. Yet someone, intentionally or not, had let a fragment slip. Was it a frustrated insider who believed the truth should surface? A rival faction attempting to apply pressure? Or an opportunist sensing weakness at the heart of power? The king's decision to authorize an independent review had been bold. But bold decisions create ripples, and ripples reach shores beyond control. Tabloids seized the vacuum instantly. Front pages hinted at a heated confrontation. Commentators speculated about strained alliances between senior figures. Phrases like "palace showdown" and "midnight crisis" flooded headlines. No one had confirmed the details, but the absence of clarity fueled imagination. In the court of public opinion, silence is rarely interpreted as innocence. It is interpreted as concealment. The public response fractured into two fierce camps. One side insisted this was a coordinated cover-up, proof that the monarchy still operated by outdated rules of secrecy and self-protection. The other dismissed the uproar as exaggerated hysteria, arguing that institutions of such magnitude inevitably encounter internal errors. But even those defending the crown could not ignore the uncomfortable truth: security footage does not simply vanish without consequence. Facing mounting pressure, the palace issued a carefully worded acknowledgement of an internal review regarding administrative protocol. No mention of deletion. No mention of confrontation. Just language engineered to calm, without confessing. It was a classic balancing act, offering enough to appear responsive, while revealing nothing that could deepen the storm. Yet the brevity of the statement did little to slow the narrative. If anything, it amplified it. Then came another development that intensified scrutiny. Queen Camilla canceled a previously scheduled public appearance, citing private obligations. The timing was impossible to ignore. Commentators dissected the decision in real time. Was she distancing herself? Was she being shielded? Or was the pressure simply too immense? The cancellation, though subtle, became symbolic, a sign that the crisis was not abstract. It was personal. International outlets began framing the situation in broader terms. Analysts questioned whether internal instability could erode public confidence in the crown's constitutional role. Foreign headlines spoke not of scandal, but of vulnerability. The monarchy, an institution built on continuity and composure, suddenly appeared reactive, defensive rather than assured. Inside Buckingham Palace, the walls felt thinner than ever. Every whispered conversation carried the weight of potential exposure. The investigation was no longer just about 11 missing minutes. It had become a test of credibility on a global stage. And as cameras lingered outside the gates and speculation spiraled unchecked, one truth crystallized within the king's inner circle: this crisis would not fade quietly. Behind the scenes, however, investigators uncovered something far more explosive than a simple act of deletion. When forensic analysts dug deeper into palace archives, they discovered something that changed everything. The deletion wasn't isolated. Over the past year, 3 minor camera glitches had occurred in proximity to sensitive meetings. At the time, they were dismissed as technical faults. Now, under scrutiny, they formed a pattern, one that pointed not just to a moment of panic, but to calculated intent. What initially appeared to be routine system irregularities began to look disturbingly deliberate. Investigators re-examined archived logs that had once been filed away without urgency. Each anomaly had occurred near high-level discussion strategy briefings, private consultations, closed-door sessions where reputations and decisions intertwined. Each time, the malfunction had been subtle. A brief interruption. A short blackout. Nothing dramatic enough to trigger alarm. But now, placed side by side, the incidents aligned with unsettling precision. The forensic review uncovered manual overrides embedded within those past irregularities. Not system errors. Not hardware failures. Overrides. Accessed using shared administrative credentials that only a handful of trusted insiders possessed. The digital signatures were fragmented, layered through encrypted pathways, yet they echoed the same structure seen in the recent deletion. It was as though someone had been rehearsing. An internal audit deepened the unease. Attendance records placed Camilla's assistant within the vicinity during each of the previous anomalies. Not alone, not conspicuously, but present. Always present. Coincidence, some argued. Proximity does not equal guilt. But in institutions where security is sacred, coincidence rarely satisfies. Then came the discovery of a confidential memo buried within internal communications. It referenced something called optical vulnerability management. The phrasing was clinical, almost academic, yet the implications were anything but. Optical vulnerability management. The suggestion that certain visuals, certain moments might require strategic oversight. Investigators debated its meaning. Was it a forward-thinking policy proposal, a risk assessment, or a quiet acknowledgement that there were moments the palace preferred not to archive? As the layers peeled back, the central question shifted. This was no longer solely about who pressed delete. It was about why. Was the footage erased to protect an individual from embarrassment? To shield a heated exchange from becoming public ammunition? Or was it meant to obscure something more consequential, something capable of destabilizing relationships within the royal hierarchy itself? Speculation of factional tension intensified. The monarchy, for all its outward unity, was sustained by competing visions. Traditionalists sought preservation. Reformists pushed recalibration. Advisors aligned themselves accordingly, each believing they were defending the crown's future. In that environment, information becomes leverage, and leverage becomes power. If the deleted footage contained words or gestures that tipped that balance, its disappearance might not have been spontaneous. It might have been strategic. King Charles, briefed on these emerging patterns, reportedly responded with a single directive: complete transparency. Even if the findings proved uncomfortable. Even if they implicated individuals whose loyalty had never before been doubted. It was a gamble. Transparency could restore faith or expose fractures too deep to repair. But retreat was no longer an option. The narrative had escaped containment, and hesitation would only deepen suspicion. Soon after, the assistant was formally suspended pending inquiry. The announcement was measured, restrained, almost understated. Yet its significance reverberated. A trusted confidante removed from duty. A signal that the investigation was no longer theoretical. It was active, personal, unavoidable. Inside the palace, conversations grew quieter, more guarded. Every alliance felt newly scrutinized. Every decision carried the shadow of implication. Because if the pattern suggested intent, and intent suggested purpose, then the deletion was merely the surface of something larger. And as suspicion narrowed, One final revelation would shift the spotlight from a staff member to the very heart of royal power. For Queen Camilla, loyalty has always been both shield and burden. Now, her closest aide stands accused of undermining the crown. Was this reckless protection, misguided devotion, or an act carried out under instruction? Palace sources describe long, private conversations between the king and queen consort, voices hushed, doors closed. Because if the deletion was meant to shield Camilla, the implications would be devastating. Camilla's public life has been defined by endurance, years of scrutiny, years of whispered judgment. She learned early that survival within the monarchy required composure so steady it bordered on unbreakable. Through controversy and rehabilitation, she cultivated an image of quiet resilience, never loud, never reactive, always measured. That discipline became her armor. But armor, no matter how polished, can still conceal vulnerability beneath. Those closest to her insist she values loyalty above almost everything else. Staff members who prove themselves are kept close, trusted deeply. The assistant, now suspended, had earned that trust over time, navigating delicate schedules and private correspondence with unwavering discretion. To imagine that this woman might jeopardize the institution without reason feels, to some insiders, implausible. Which is why a softer theory began circulating in cautious tones. Perhaps this was not sabotage, but protection. Protection of dignity. Protection of a moment that, if misinterpreted, could reopen wounds the royal household had fought hard to heal. Yet that theory carries its own danger. If the assistant acted independently, believing she was shielding the queen consort from embarrassment or fallout, then it suggests a culture of silent crisis management, one where perception sometimes outweighs protocol. And if she did not act alone, if there was even the faintest suggestion of guidance from above, the implications would pierce far deeper. The difference between rogue devotion and coordinated concealment is the difference between personal error and institutional breach. Royal biographers watching from the sidelines began to speculate about unseen pressures. They spoke of the delicate balancing act Camilla has endured since stepping fully into her role beside the king. They questioned whether private tensions, strategic disagreements, emotional strain might have escalated behind closed doors. None claimed certainty. But the narrative was no longer confined to deleted files. It had become about relationships, about trust within a marriage that sits at the apex of national symbolism. Reports emerged that King Charles, in a moment described as resolute yet painful, insisted that Camilla not interfere with the inquiry. It was not a gesture of mistrust, but of principle. The monarchy, he believed, must not appear compromised by personal allegiance. That insistence drew a quiet line between them, not of division, but of duty. For a couple who had weathered decades of turbulence to stand publicly united, this internal separation, however temporary, carried emotional weight. When Camilla next appeared in public, her composure remained intact. Her words were precise, her demeanor steady. Yet observers noted something subtle, a tightness, a restraint that felt heavier than usual. It was the posture of someone aware that every glance, every gesture would be analyzed for cracks. The contrast was stark, the polished exterior of royal success against the private strain of potential betrayal. Meanwhile, the suspended assistant prepared to deliver a formal statement to investigators. Those close to her described a mixture of resolve and apprehension. Would she accept full responsibility? Would she implicate others? Or would her testimony redirect the narrative entirely? The palace waited, the nation watched, and the personal stakes grew inseparable from institutional survival. As the investigation reached its climax, the monarchy braced for a conclusion that could either restore trust or permanently fracture it. After weeks of silence, the palace released a statement at precisely 9:00 a.m. No questions, no press conference, just words carefully chosen, legally precise. The assistant accepted responsibility for the deletion, citing misguided judgment, but the report left critical questions unanswered. What truly happened in those 11 minutes? And why does the king's final comment, "History will remember this lesson," sound less like closure and more like warning? The announcement was brief, almost austere. It confirmed the assistant's resignation, effective immediately. No criminal charges would be pursued. The language framed the act as a breach of protocol, serious, regrettable, but ultimately administrative. A failure of judgment rather than evidence of conspiracy. On paper, it seemed contained, clean, manageable. Yet beneath the formal tone, the absence of detail felt deliberate. The report acknowledged the deletion but offered no insight into the content erased. No explanation of the heated exchange. No clarification of the heightened security that night. Independent oversight measures were introduced swiftly. External auditors would review surveillance governance. New layers of authorization would be required for future overrides. Transparency protocols would be modernized. It was the language of reform, the promise of safeguards. King Charles, through a carefully crafted address days later, spoke not of scandal but of integrity. He emphasized accountability. He spoke of institutions evolving through challenge. His voice carried the steadiness of a monarch determined to project continuity, even as questions lingered just beneath the surface. Public reaction fractured once more. Some saw the resignation as proof that the system worked, that no one, however trusted, was above consequence. Relief spread among those eager to close the chapter. Others were not satisfied. They pointed to the gaps in the report. They questioned why no further disciplinary action was taken. They asked why the contents of the deleted footage remained shielded from scrutiny. In the age of relentless exposure, the idea of sealed archives felt almost provocative. Camilla resumed her duties with the composure expected of her role. Engagements proceeded. Speeches were delivered. Smiles returned to public view. Yet scrutiny followed her more closely than before. Every interaction was parsed for subtext. Every pause examined for strain. The monarchy thrives on symbolism, and symbolism now carried the weight of unspoken context. The assistant's departure had drawn a line under the immediate crisis, but it had not erased the memory of the gap. Within palace walls, the atmosphere shifted in subtler ways. Security procedures tightened. Conversations grew more guarded. Trust, once assumed, became something quietly recalibrated. Those who had witnessed the internal debates understood that the true impact of the incident was not merely procedural, it was psychological. The realization that the crown could be shaken from within left a mark deeper than any headline. And then there were the unanswered questions. The metadata that hinted at raised voices. The hurried exit captured elsewhere. The confidential memo referencing optical vulnerabilities. Officially, the matter was resolved. Unofficially, uncertainty endured. Because history rarely forgets anomalies. It stores them. It waits. In his final remark, King Charles did not speak of closure. He spoke of lessons. History will remember this lesson, he said, a phrase that resonated beyond the immediate controversy. It suggested that the monarchy had not merely survived an internal breach, but had been altered by it. That somewhere in the quiet corridors of power, decisions were made that would shape future caution, future loyalty, future restraint. The assistant's name will fade from headlines. The statement will be archived. The reforms will be implemented. Yet the 11 missing minutes remain unaccounted for in the public record. And perhaps that is the true legacy of the crisis, not the deletion itself, but the awareness that even within the most fortified institution, there are moments too volatile to preserve. Because in the monarchy, as in history itself, what is erased often leaves a shadow far darker than what remains visible. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.